So we're now into the fourth quarter of the year, and the album of the year conversation is heating up, and we still have a few months, but as of right now, a lot of people seem to have that album of the year locked in. So I want to read out some albums, and I want you to tell me if they're album of the year contenders.
Let's do it.
Starting off with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
Absolutely.
Okay, what about I Never Liked You by Future?
Not in my books.
Okay, what about The Forever Story by J.I.D?
Yes, absolutely.
Drill Music in Zion.
For sure.
What about DS Forever by Gunna?
Not in my books.
Okay, 2000 by Joey Badass.
Yes.
Vinyl Days by Logic.
I'm on the fence, but I'm going to say yes.
Okay, Cheat Codes by Black Thought and Danger Mouse.
Absolutely.
All right, It's Almost Dry by Pusha T.
Steamy take here, but I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no in my conversation.
We got to talk about that later. Yeah. Ramona Park, Broke My Heart by Vince Staples.
Could be considered, but just not on my list today.
The Elephant Man's Bones by Rock Marciano.
Fantastic listen. Really enjoyed it, but wouldn't be on my list.
Okay, so let's get into the album of the year conversation, man. So, like, right now, do you have one that's kind of, taking precedence over the rest? Like,
yes, but I'm going to say this about my album of the year, like contender at the moment. I think the word contender is important to keep in rotation for this episode because, like, anything could change. I mean, there's certain months or days where I have a certain album in rotation and I feel like that should be taking my number one spot. So I want to make that clear. Nothing is final on this list right now, but I think The Forever Story is definitely the most interesting track list I heard this year. And I could say a lot of different albums are challenging it at the moment, but what I think that this album strives in is consistency. Like, there's not a single skip on this album. That's rare in 2022. The pacing of the album was absolutely perfect. Dynamic performances by J.I.D. Memorable tracks. Like, what else do you want out of a memorable experience?
And I think the reason, by the way, I have The Forever Story by J.I.D. as my number one as well, and I think that it's because it's the most flawless album in a sense, where there's very few flaws with it, and I think that the main thing that it does better than a lot of these other albums, in my opinion at least, even comparing it to something like Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, is that J.I.D. executes on his artistic range in a better way, in the sense that when you're looking at the singing cuts on this album, like Cody Blue 31 or Galaxy or Bread and M, his singing really improved over the years. He's giving you these sweet harmonies, these beautiful hooks, and that's kind of a big weakness for a lot of albums in 2022, where when artists try that melodic bag, they can't keep and hold their weight.
It depends the way you want to look at it, because obviously
Kendrick on Purple Hearts, bro. The whole baby inflection.
And listen, in my opinion, it's not his strongest performance, but it's not like that's a bad song or like I skip that for me. Like, I'll still listen to Purple Hearts and I'll be entertained by the song and I'll be okay with it in my track list. And I know it's big for a lot of people, but
do you think J.I.D's a better singer than a lot of these other albums in contention?
Yeah, the singing performances were big, but I don't see it as that much of a big factor in the reason why it's my number one.
It is.
I think the biggest factor for me was really the consistency. Like, that was something I was craving this year, was consistency within a track list. Like, being able to have a start to finish where, like, I don't doubt any single track on this album, and that was achieved for me with The Forever Story. But another album that I wanted to compare to this, and I think I'm going to bring in another one as well, is Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers and Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. Like, those have been my locks.
Tell me, was Mr. Morale not as consistent to you as The Forever Story?
I think yes. And the same thing goes for Melt My Eyes, See Your Future, because you can make the argument that there's kind of a dip down on Melt My Eyes, See Your Future just towards the end. I mean, it's not even that big of a dip down. Like, I still love the album. I think the pacing is phenomenal. I fuck with so many songs.
I do want to say this, though.
Yeah.
That first 6-track run on Melt My Eyes, See Your Future is the best of the year.
Yeah, it's the highest high.
Melt Session number 1, Walkin', Worst Comes to Worst, John Wayne, The Last, and Mental.
Absolutely.
Flawless run.
It is a flawless run. And that's why I think that album is in my conversation, because, like, I feel as if Melt My Eyes, See Your Future has the highest highs of the year. Yeah. That's kind of like the way I see that album, but there's a bit of a dip off on the second half. Let me know if you guys agree with me on that. But Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, I think what, kind of happened for me was that I kind of got some of the best philosophy, I could say, and content matter of the year.
Best writing, I would say.
Yeah, like, just on... That's debatable, because you could also compare that to like Drill Music in Zion and Cheat Codes that I could talk about after for that spot. But what was interesting about Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers is that the engagement level throughout it was crazy. Like, tell me this, do you think it's the album that kept you the most locked in and focused for the listen from like song to song on that first listen?
I think it was definitely the most intriguing, just because Kendrick showed us a new side of himself. He experimented. He had this super minimalistic production soundscape where you have a lot of piano riffs carrying a lot of the beats.
Yeah.
That was something that he'd never done before. Not only that, but you kind of had this mellow tone from Kendrick, and just the idea of it being a therapy session from both sides of the project. that was genius as well. But I think that another reason why I would put J.I.D's The Forever Story above it is that J.I.D is one of the only rappers that is showing hunger and that actually wants that top spot of the throne. And I feel like, to me, in my opinion, there's a lack of competitive energy within the rap scene right now. And J.I.D on a song like Radar, he's literally rapping about becoming the Thanos of hip-hop and knocking everybody else from that seat.
No,
I love that kind of energy.
I understand you like it, but like I can't give a point for The Forever Story having that because the approach from
I think he's a better MC as well on The Forever Story. In terms of
so
bar for bar?
No, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure because listen, I will agree that the J.I.D performance was spectacular. It was consistent, but listen, if
I'm looking at flows and cadences, bro.
I think
who has a bigger arsenal on both of those albums, the flows and cadences?
I think you gotta go Kendrick, bro. I swear to God,
I gotta go
bro. Listen to something like United in Grief or Worldwide Steppers, bro. Like that's completely different.
Listen to Dance Now. Listen to Surround Sound.
I get and listen, they're fantastic
listen to
performances.
Crack Sandwich,
but
bro.
Listen,
Come on.
I get it. I listen. I find that J.I.D had one of the best performances all year,
but not better than Kendrick's.
It's on the same level for me. It's just different. I think that diversity and the way that it was delivered, maybe it goes to Kendrick. I think consistency overall on the track list and I don't know, a couple of other areas, maybe you could even argue flow to a certain extent. I would go J.I.D.
I just feel like
that's where I'm
as amazing as Kendrick's writing was, his rhyme schemes, all super well calculated, I was missing those one-liners. I was missing bars like, you know I'm a rant when I talk to Jal. Like all those clever wordplay and double entendres that you would have gotten on something like Damn, for example, or Good Kid, Mad City. I feel like that was not really the focus of this Kendrick album. That was totally fine.
It wasn't.
That was totally fine.
And I think so. So like that's why that's where I think Mr. On the Big Stepper strives. And where I think Denzel strives in his own artist performance is keeping that consistency within the first half of that album. Like that is one of the best runs I've seen all year. And even like the emotional factor that went into like the vulnerability, like the amount of like Denzel was just as hungry as J.I.D, but just as vulnerable as someone like Kendrick in a sense. That's kind of the way I see it.
I'll say this from an unbiased point of view. The Forever Story is the best album of the year, but my personal favorite listen of the year is Melt My Eyes, See Your Future. And it's for a few reasons. I just think that overall it is the best album experience of the year for me.
In what way?
In the sense that when I'm looking at the visuals for the albums, through the music videos, those were super cinematic. And I feel like what's amazing about this album is that it really immerses you because it feels like there's a sense of constant movement throughout the track list, which I've spoken about before. On songs like Walkin', you feel like you're along the ride as Denzel's walking through this desert. And same thing with John Wayne.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you, but I also want to butt in and say this, that the atmosphere of the soundscape is beautiful because I was in my whip at a certain point just playing it for like a full day straight, and I was driving a lot that day and it was raining. And it's one of the best albums I've ever had for that sort of moody soundscape because yes, it's uplifting and progressive with its content matter, but the production is it feels like it's sunny at certain points, but it could also get very dark and it also could get very like, you know, kind of calming to a certain extent. Like example, the instrumental on the last, like that's one of my favorite of the year. Melt Session #1, that was just beautiful. That was bliss. Like Walking, that vocal sample. There's a lot going on, but yet there's this constant mood throughout the track.
Beautiful elements of neo soul, of jazz sprinkled throughout. You know, thanks to Robert Glasper and everybody else that did a fantastic job on the production. But I want to ask you something, all right? Because something that I looked at, you know, when making my album of the year list was also, was there an ascension for the artist? Did they elevate? Did they upgrade? Did they evolve from their last album? And I can say that about Denzel. I can say that about Kendrick. I can say that about J.I.D. I don't think I can say that too much about Pusha T with It's Almost Dry or Joey Badass with 2000.
Okay, so which one do you want to attack first? You want to go into It's Almost Dry?
Let's talk about It's Almost Dry because a lot of people have that as their album of the year, including
listen,
Tom Brady.
I think it was a great listen. I genuinely enjoyed it as an album experience, and honestly, 4 years was worth the wait. Well, fuck it, I'll say it. Like I could have waited 4 years and
it was great,
and I was happy with it, you know. But to sit down and kind of say like, yeah, this is on the same level as Daytona, or like it has that power to be able to compete for that album.
Didn't even have the same impact.
I don't think so at the moment. Like there was songs like Scrape It Off on there, and like listen, you guys might be a fan of the song, but to me that is a low tier Pusha T song.
He sounded like a guest artist on his own song.
But I mean, like, and that's the thing, is that Pusha T is a fantastic lyricism, and you're gonna get high quality coke bars, you're gonna get beautiful sample flips. It's all there within the track list. If you like that lane, this is gonna be a great listen for you. Just in my opinion, when you have to stack it up against the upper echelon, like that album doesn't touch cheat codes for me.
It doesn't doesn't even touch Tana Talk 4 by Benny the Butcher, which is in the same fucking subgenre
exactly.
of rap.
But and that's what remember when I told you at the beginning of this episode, I'm going to bring in a surprise album? Tana Talk 4,
fucking awesome, bro.
It's one of the most underrated albums this year. And I mean, listen, a lot of people fuck with it, and I know, but it's more of the core fan base, but this needs to be talked about, like, close to the top 5, bro. It's such a well-produced album.
Really
the Alchemist ripped all of those samples along with Beat Butcher and Derringer, and Benny the Butcher brought his game on this. Like, when I listened to the plugs, I Met 2 versus Tana Talk 4, there was a clear evolution, and there was something that happened there that was beautiful. So even at that, like, It's Almost Dry can't even compete in that lane. So I don't listen. I didn't want to include it.
I also felt like the Coke metaphors and all those kinds of references were a bit elementary for Pusha T. I feel like they weren't as complex or as interesting. And I feel like even as a luxury rap album, it's not even the best in that lane. I feel like 2000 by Joey Badass did a better job of giving you that luxury sound by him just kind of modernizing boom bap and these old traditional elements of hip hop. Because with It's Almost Dry, I mean, you're not getting the same type of talk that you would have gotten on Daytona in the sense of, like, him telling you, like, let's make our bottle servers race. You know what I mean? Like, those kinds of lines, I feel like it's missing the quotables for me. For me personally.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did enjoy the overall, like, theme of the album. Like, he was consistent with the Coke talk. You know, he obviously brought that. It's going to be a Pusha T album. It's going to be focused.
The Joker voice was awesome.
Yes, and that was another thing.
Nice.
I feel like because he had to switch up some of his ad libs and, like, the vibe behind some of his cadences, and that was an excellent direction to go into. I just don't have it there. But I want to talk about 2 other albums on my list today that I wanted to have in my album of the year contention: Joe Music and Zion, and also Cheat Codes.
Yes,
and I think that those 2 albums kind of achieved the same thing for their own respective lanes. I mean, you're getting some of the best sample flips all year with some of the best lyrical performances all year. Very meditative from both MCs with a competitive edge to it. You have Lupe Fiasco delivering you kind of a stripped back version of his lyricism that you might get on his previous albums, but now it still sounds refreshed and modernized for 2022, where it's like, okay, more people are going to be able to access this. And then you get something like Cheat Codes, which is very rustic and has, like, you know, a very vintage feel to it, almost like it was made in the late 90s, and it's released in 2022.
Yeah, I think lyrically, when you're looking, you know, pound for pound, bar for bar, these are the best 2 albums when it comes to lyricism in 2022. But I do think that Drill Music and Zion is superior.
Well, I think Cheat Codes is superior.
Okay, I'll tell you why. I think Drill Music and Zion is the best executed concept album of the year.
Interesting.
In comparison to everything else, I think that whole idea of him giving you this philosophy about how the pursuit for money corrodes beautiful things, that was excellently demonstrated all throughout that track list. Not only that, but I also feel like Lupe Fiasco is maybe the most creative writer in hip-hop right now. And you're looking at a song like Precious Things, where he's personifying his own hands and talking from their perspective and how they've kind of led him astray. That was fucking beautiful. Also, the song Kiosk was an amazing way to show, just how rappers have to put on a certain image. Then you look at On Phonum, the outro, that whole verse where he's like, too many rappers are dying, and he ends the verse there. You know how powerful that was as a fucking statement?
And listen, I fuck with it. I will say, I love the album. I have it. I'm going to have it in my top 10 albums of the year, absolutely, as a lock. I just, like, when listening to Cheat Codes, I feel like it's one of the most diverse hip-hop albums that I've gotten in a minute, just from, like, the sound and feel of it, because obviously, you know, you're going to be having Danger Mouse coming in here, and I want to see him start producing more rap records, because I was speaking about this with you. The sample flips are super quirky. Like, you're not hearing this from any other soundscape, and that's a feeling that guys like, let's say, Madlib give me, or someone like, let's say, The Alchemist gives me. Like, I love that through soundscapes, and maybe I find a bit with Drill Music and Zion, like, I love the jazzy production. I just don't think it's as original or well executed as what Danger Mouse did on Cheat Codes. And for the lyricism, yes, I do think that you might get Lupe Fiasco on the overall philosophy and theme and flow of the album, but what I think Black Thought strives in more for Cheat Codes is his witty punchlines, is the way that he sets himself up. It's the technical capability, and I think Lupe does, challenge him on that.
Super technical, bro. Come on.
He is, but Black Thought does it in a different way, where it's also relatable, where sometimes Lupe may be too complicated for a regular listener, And
but this is his most accessible album, though. I kind of feel totally different about it, and I feel like with Lupe, he's kind of creating this maze where, yes, maybe you'll have to give it repeated listens, but that adds replay value because you're going back and being like, okay, what did he actually mean with this bar? What did he mean by this verse? What was the purpose of it? And I feel like that's what's super impactful about Lupe's music. But to your credit with Cheat Codes, I love the album. I think that one of my only like minor issues was kind of the mixing. I felt like the mixing and mastering wasn't the greatest, just because it felt like
I got over it.
The production kind of like, I would say, overpowered his vocals at times. That's kind of how I felt. But speaking about another album that kind of brought back these old sounds and samples, we have 2000 by Joey Badass. Where does it rank for you, roughly?
Wow, interesting question. Like, I think that it's one of my most played albums of the year. Like, just start to finish listens. It's also a super consistent track list. Like, songs like Eulogy have been one of my most played all year. Like, I love, to be able to see one of my favorite MCs, like, from the 2010 decade and see his evolution, not only as an MC, but also as a person and where he's at within, now, his New York state of mind. And I enjoy that. And I love how he was able to take the concept of Brooklyn rap and bring it back into 2022 in such a respectful and well-executed way. Like, having, producers like Static Select to handle this soundscape was the perfect move for him in this direction. And I have it, within maybe the 7 to 8 range. I think that's where I'm going to start considering it more or less. At least in my opinion.
What do you think knocks it down some points? Like, why isn't it in that upper echelon for you? I have a few reasons for that.
I don't think it's anything like that. Like, I just, when in comparison, I mean, comparison is obviously the killer of joy, but it doesn't take away from my replay value with the album. I still love it. I go back to it.
Do you have any flaws with it, though?
Not really. Like, I genuinely don't find too much with it. There was one melodic performance on the album that I'd
Welcome
have to go
back with Chris Brown.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that too much. Like, I'd have to go back and revisit the track list to get refreshed. But I mean, overall, I have some of my favorite songs all year, so I'm gonna have to put it in my conversation. Yeah, How about you though? What are your flaws with it?
I think it's Joey's weakest album when I'm looking at his short discography, which is not really a knock because the guy has a fantastic catalog. But with me, I felt like there was a hunger missing from Joey. I felt like he sounded a bit too comfortable. And after taking, that 5-year gap off, I expected him to come and show us that he's really matured as a writer. I feel like also when I'm looking at the double entendres, when I'm looking at the wordplay, when I'm looking at the lyricism that was on 1999, it was stronger than 2000. That's 10 years he had to improve. And I just felt like this album was a fantastic reminder that Joey was still that guy, but it wasn't much of an evolution for me.
But I mean,
it was a soundscape. It was a soundscape you already tackled. It was, what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, like, looking at the album from, like, the value standpoint, like, there's not much wrong with it, bro, as a listen. Like, you're getting some of the best production all year. You're getting top-tier lyricism from Joey. You're getting luxury rap, at one of its highest forms for 2022. Like, I could really see past that. Like, I don't want to go back.
There's not many flaws. I'm saying in terms of these other artists who really ascended with these albums, I feel like Joey didn't have the same type of evolution.
But maybe the trajectory, but I mean, that's personal for their own careers. Like, for what 2022 offered, like, he definitely delivered one of the best efforts of the year. And I think that, like, looking at even that soundscape, there's very few that can really touch it.
It's top 10. I'm letting you know why I wouldn't have it, like, within that upper echelon.
You're getting me scared. I'm like, dude, you're not putting it in your top 10.
I want to talk about now, what are some albums that you think can crash the party, bro? And just fuck up our list before the year ends. What do you have in mind, bro?
Fuck. There's not, like, after hearing Freddie's new single with Moneybagg Yo, like, sold separately, kind of had a dip off in, like, my expectations, just because, like, I hope he's able to capture his classic Freddie sound, and obviously he's still a top tier lyricist, but I have a real concern about not having someone like Madlib or The Alchemist like directing this soundscape. But nonetheless, he's obviously delivered great studio albums, so I just don't think that automatically like that's gonna touch, let's say, the Forever Story. I mean, another guy that could possibly do it. At the moment, I'm being honest, bro, I kind of have my shit on lock. Like, I genuinely
don't think anybody else could crash this party.
But think about it, man.
I think so.
I got some of the best of the genre within this year, like J.I.D. There's probably not a lot of people touching that. Kendrick, there's probably not a lot of people touching that. Denzel, no one's really touching that. Black Thought, Lupe Fiasco, like, we're talking about album artists,
If Nas and Hit Boy decide to saddle up again, and he comes with the same vitality he had in 2021, bro, it could be a fucking rap, bro.
No, it's not going to be a rap. No, come on.
It could be. I said it could be a rap, bro, because when Magic came out, bro, in December, I'm like, holy fuck, this just screwed up my entire album of the year list, because with every repeated listen, I'm like, this is a near perfect album, and Nas sounds like he was sounding back on It Was Written, back in the fucking 90s. I can't believe
awesome.
How much he was able.
I don't think they drop it this year, though.
You don't think so?
I would have put my money on August, I'm being honest with you, like, because that's when the first installment and second installment comes out, but you know what? maybe it could happen. Maybe you see a November, December drop, because there's a lot of people that sneak out albums, towards the end of December. It's low-key a hot season for music. So
I just think it would be such a badass move, bro, if he just like comes in as, the veteran and shows everybody who else is on their grind who's coming up that like he's still that guy. You know what I mean? It's like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino, bro. Like, get the fuck off my lawn.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
do it, but I think you've gotten like so many strong like albums this year that it would be extremely
hard
tough
to compete.
But someone like Nas could definitely.
What about Travis Scott if Utopia drops?
I don't expect him to drop it, but I mean, like, yeah, you could always have the conversation about a Travis album. It's just like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I really do think the only guy. I don't even think there's anyone to be honest.
Lil Wayne with the Carter 6. I don't think he'll get album of the year.
I don't think so.
But I think it'll be a solid
How about
release.
you? Anyone else besides like
Besides that, I mean, Wayne could do something. Apart from that, I'm not really sure. I mean, Danny Brown, I think, is slated to release. I'm excited about that one. I don't know if it'll be album of the year material, but still super curious about that. But with Travis Scott, I think that's a possibility, bro. I mean, he's someone that's really pushing the boundaries of music still. So I'm super excited about that. But guys, let us know down in the comments. Do you think that the album of the year has already come out? If not, what do you think will replace it? And what is your current album of the year? And by the way, we've done a lot of live album reactions to most of these albums that we've spoken about in today's episode. So if you guys do want to catch our reactions to those, check out the link in our description. And thank you guys so much for rocking with us. And we'll catch you in the next one.